Hello, friends and residency candidates. This is Zeph, the Chief Residency Advisor for Match a Resident and Residency Experts. And today we're going to be talking about following up with residency programs. So if you have questions about what type of communication you should be having with programs before your interview or after your interview or during the time of rank season, then we're going to be talking about all those things today. So if you have questions, make sure you leave them in the comments. And if you have already written certain letters of communication with programs like letters of interest and you want help with editing them, make sure you check out residencyexperts.com. That is where we provide editing and optimization for letters of interest, letters of intent, thank yous, and we're going to be talking about all of those in depth today. So again, if you have questions, make sure you leave them in the comments. And if you want to let us know how your interview season is going, if you've had an interview, if you had positive experiences or maybe a surprising experience that you think everybody else should know about, make sure you leave that in the comments as well, just so we can hear from you. And yeah, we're going to be diving into it today. So I'm going to hop on here with my friend Tiffany, who is our Director of Communications. So as I said, we're going to be talking about following up with residency programs today. And welcome, Tiffany.
Hello, everybody.
How's everything going, Tiffany?
Everything is going really good today. Excited to be here and to do this live because we are getting a ton of questions lately about when should I contact programs, what should I say to programs, how many programs should I contact. I would say it is the most frequently asked question of the last week or so. So I think this is a really timely and relevant topic for us to be talking about with everybody today.
Perfect. So what is one of the number one questions that we're getting right now?
I would say the number one question is, should I reach out to programs? I haven't heard anything, and should I go ahead and send them some type of communication, basically to let them know I'm here. I'm interested, and I want your attention. So I would say the should I is really the first most important question. And I know, Zeph, we've been talking a lot about letters of interest, and I think that really the answer to should I lies in the description of the letter.
Yeah, exactly. And so something everybody really needs to keep in mind is that there are certain times when you should contact residency programs and certain times where it's not really that appropriate. And just pinging a program with an email that says, hey, I applied, please look at my application, thanks, goodbye. That's really not appropriate or professional or helpful. It's probably going to hurt you more than help you. But sending a well thought, well crafted, tailored, and very specific letter of interest to maybe your top 5 or 20 programs can actually be extremely helpful. But the most important thing is that you're actually tailoring every single letter of interest to each program. So the letter of interest really should be more about the program than necessarily about yourself. And the reason for that is because you want to show the program everything that you know about that institution, that hospital, that specific residency program, and to really talk about the things that you're specifically excited about to potentially be able to train for that program. So the letter of interest is a great way to introduce those ideas. And you're basically selling the residency program to themselves. And the reason that we say, focus on your top 5, 10, maybe up to 20 or 30 programs is because it takes time to craft a well-written letter of interest. And so there's a few things that everybody should keep in mind about letters of interest. And the first thing is that, again, you really want to be focusing on the program. And there's specific things that you can look for that you might be able to bring up in your letters of interest. Something like the mission and values is actually pretty generic. So just talking about their mission and putting a quote in your letter of interest for their mission and saying that you agree with it, you could do that for every single residency program across the United States. And it doesn't really help your case. But actually talking about maybe some training tracks that they offer or special elective rotations. Potentially there's research happening at that institution or by a certain doctor that's part of that residency program. Maybe there's a resident wellness initiative and there's a specific aspect of that initiative that you're particularly interested in. These are things that can actually help sell the program to themselves. So you really want to make sure you're as specific as possible with regards to why you're interested. So that should really be your main focus for every letter of interest. And then the secondary portions are, yeah, okay, now you can talk about yourself a little bit. Pick out some of your top experiences from your CV, or maybe some things that you mentioned in your personal statements, and incorporate those into the letter of interest and just reaffirming why you would be a good fit. And the more relevant you can make your personal experiences and characteristics to the actual program based on what you mentioned already, the more impactful it's going to be. You can also just talk about briefly what you'd like to add to the program and potentially maybe where you see yourself progressing through your career. It's basically like a mini cover letter, personal statement, CV, all combined into one. And they don't have to be extraordinarily long either. You don't want them to be overly verbose. And anywhere from about 200 to 500 words is probably a good range for the letters of interest.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to add in, and this really speaks to what I said was the most frequently asked question. The most frequently asked question is, should I send the letter of interest? And it's usually followed up with a, because I just got my step 2 CK score back, or I just got ECFMG certified. So there's something that you want to communicate to the program beyond your interest. And if that's the case, if you do have something that you need to communicate to a program, you can disguise it within your letter of interest. But as Seth is saying, your focus in that letter needs to be the program themselves. And so that's your starting point. When you think about actually composing your letter of interest, it is key, as Zeph said, to start with why the program is so great and to sell the program on themselves, because that's going to get their interest and hopefully get them to read all the way through your letter of interest or email, which you'll be sending the letter of interest via email. And then at the bottom, one of the last things that you can do is go ahead and insert that important thing that you want them to know. So that's not coming across as the main point. It's just coming across as a by the way that you're putting in toward the end.
Right. And so right now, the letter of interest is pre-interview. So you have not gotten an interview invitation, you have not gotten a rejection, and you're sending the letter of interest to try to generate more interviews. And it's right now pre-interview. Tiffany's absolutely right. It's not the time to be just mentioning the fact that you got your CK score or you're ECFMG certified now, or minor things if you haven't heard from that program. After interviews, if it comes down to the rank order list and you do have important updates like getting ECFMG certified, or maybe your visa status changed, that's actually more okay to communicate to programs during the rank order season when you've actually established a relationship with them and you've had an interview and they actually care about those things. They really don't care for the most part about, the 600 people who just got their CK score, who they haven't reached out to yet. It's really, they want those pertinent updates for the people that they've actually started to generate interest in the program. So again, pre-interview, you really should only be sending letters of interest, formal, specifically tailored to each program, well-written, well-edited letters of interest. And as I mentioned, if you need help editing those, go to residencyexperts.com. That's where we help with the editing and polishing for all sorts of letters of communication with residency programs.
Yeah, and a quick tip for those of you who are starting to compose those letters of interest. As Zeph said, keep that length pretty short, 200 to 500 words at the very, very top end, and keep your paragraphs short. So just a writer's tip for you guys. Think about yourself when you open up an email. If it's one big, long chunk of words, you don't usually want to read it. You want to just maybe save that one for later or just skim through it. So keep the length short and keep the paragraphs within your letter short, and that gets you a higher chance of having your email actually opened and read by the people who you want to read it. So.
Right. And so another big question I think we get is what should the subject line be and who to direct it towards? Um, so Tiffany, do you have some ideas for subject lines that people might want to use for letters of interest?
Yeah, keep it simple and keep it direct, first and foremost. We don't need really, really long subject lines. So something as simple as a letter of interest from Tiffany McPherson. That could be perfect for your subject line. If you wanted to include a little bit more detail, you could put a letter of interest from T. McPherson for your internal medicine residency program. You could also add in the program's name if you wanted to, but that might be a little extra. The program knows their own name. They know where where they are, so you don't necessarily have to go to such great lengths. But you should identify yourself and you should identify what the content is. So it's important to include letter of interest in the subject line, and it's also important to include at least your first initial, last name, if not your full name.
Right. And when actually sending an email, for example, we typically recommend directing it towards the program coordinator and the program director, simply because you don't know which of them is more likely to open it. And you basically can't make an assumption that all program directors or all program coordinators are going to read letters of interest, but it's a safer bet that at least one of them might open it up. And especially if you're using their full names when you introduce the letter. It shows that you've taken the time to make sure you know who you're talking to. Don't just say residency review committee if you're directing it specifically to the coordinator and the program director. Use their names, their formal names, and that's going to make them feel, okay, wow, this person, A, they know who we are. That's great. B, I'm starting to read the first few lines and they're just talking very specifically about our program. So I know they're genuinely interested. I'm going to keep reading this. Versus anything less than that, they might not continue to read and they won't be motivated to continue to read that. And something I want to throw out there as well for everybody to consider is that for basically every communication, pre-application and post-application, pre-interview, post-interview, every time you're communicating with a residency program, make sure you include your AIRS photograph and your AAMC ID basically in the signature area for all your communications, because this helps reinforce, okay, this is what this person looks like, and it helps provide extremely easy access to your AAMC ID where they can just copy it, paste it into AIRS, pull your application up, and start reviewing it and put you in that interview pile. So that's something very important. So include your photograph and your AAMC ID in the signature for basically all communication with residency programs.
I have one more question on the letter of interest topic that I think I've been asked a couple of times now, and I think that everybody would benefit from your input. After sending the letter of interest via email, if you receive an emailed response, and let's say it seems somewhat generic, just a thank you for your email, we're still reviewing applications. Is there a need to then respond to the email that responded to you, or are we better to just leave it until we hear something back that's a little more personalized?
Mm-hmm. Well, if they respond to you and say, thank you, it's definitely okay to at least respond with a final, hello, thank you so much for getting back to me. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Regards, your name, photograph, AAMC ID. And that way, it's a nice conclusion to the conversation. And, you don't have to start spouting off all the reasons why you're interested in their program again, if you've already
Right.
done that. But just a simple, thanks for the reply is definitely okay to send back to them.
Okay. All right, great. So I think that we can talk about letter number two, which is actually a thank you letter. Many of you have had interviews already, and if not, you've got upcoming interviews. And if you're still waiting on invitations, that's okay. They're going to come. We still have several months left of interview season. So you will be in a position after you do get your interview invite, and then you need to send the thank you letter. So what is the thank you letter all about?
So the most important thing to keep in mind for the thank you letter is that it should generate a memory of who you were as an applicant. So sending the thank you letter to specific people that you interviewed with is extremely helpful. And the reason for that is because you can point out memorable aspects of your discussion with those people, which is why it's important to take notes for yourself after your interviews so that you remember, okay, I talked to this person and we actually talked about a kind of random topic, but it's memorable and interesting. And it's very helpful to bring those up in the thank you letters because it helps reinforce who you were as an applicant and memorable aspects of yourself as a person and potentially as for your candidacy as well. So the thank yous are basically obviously expressing your thanks and gratitude for the opportunity, um, discussing some memorable aspects of the interview itself. You can include the date that you took the interview just to remind them. And then you can discuss briefly, what you're looking forward to about the program and that you are excited for the opportunity to potentially work and train together in the future. And the thank you can be relatively short. You don't want it to be a 500-word thank you letter, but a couple very short paragraphs. Again, trying to generate something memorable for your interview experiences. And again, tailoring the thank you letters, maybe one for the program director, one for the program coordinator, and one for the chief resident, all of which you had individual conversations with and you were able to connect with on different levels about different topics. Send them each a thank you. Maybe there was a resident that you particularly just hit it off with and felt really great about talking with them. Send them a thank you as well. So it's very important to tailor the thank yous as much as possible. Now, for those people who are, getting 20 or 30 interviews throughout the season, you honestly may not have time to send 5 thank yous for each of those interviews. So picking your top 2 people to send those thank yous to can be important. For people who only have 2 to 5 interviews throughout the season, or maybe 10, send more of those thank yous. You're going to have more time to tailor them to each individual that you spoke with. So there is a certain degree of time, of course, that it's going to take, and you have to weigh, how much time you have versus the benefits of sending a thank you to every single person you spoke to versus maybe the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I think in the thank you letter, just as with the letter of interest, you definitely want to include your photo. It's even more important in the thank you letter, right? Because now you've already seen each other face to face, so that reminder of who you are can be really key along with the thank you letter.
Right, exactly. So again, always include your photograph and AAMC ID. For these letters of communication, it's critical to keep them relatively short and straightforward. You don't want to bombard programs with a personal statement length essay for a letter of interest or a thank you.
All right, so we have a third type of letter to discuss, and this one is a little bit away, a little bit further along in the season once we start to get into rank order lists. And this is the letter of intent. So this is a very important letter. They're all important, but this one being so close to match day is probably the most important. So can you tell us a little bit about what the letter of intent should look like?
Right. So the letter of intent, the purpose is basically to let programs know that you intend on ranking them highly. And it's important to do this for your top programs because it helps them understand, okay, this person has genuine interest in our program, especially if you sent them a letter of interest, you sent them a strong thank you letter, and now you're sending a letter of intent. You've been reinforcing throughout the entire season that you are genuinely interested in their program and they're more likely to rank you higher. So the letter of intent is basically reaching out to the program, mentioning perhaps a couple aspects of the program that you're again looking forward to. You don't want to repeat what was in your letter of interest or your thank you necessarily, but try to bring something new to the table for the letter of intent. You don't need to make it extremely long, but just say that you're planning on ranking them very highly and name a couple reasons of why you plan on ranking them so highly and that you look forward to an opportunity to potentially train with them in the near future. And some people ask whether or not you should be telling a program if they're your number one choice. And there's a lot of different opinions about this, but if you truly do have a number one choice that's been your number one throughout the entirety of the application season, it has not changed, you are absolutely sure this is your number one choice, it is actually okay to tell one program that they are your number one choice. And again, reinforce the reasons as to why they're your number one choice. And understand that it, of course, would be a very dishonest and dishonorable thing to do is to send that to multiple programs. Of course, that's would be very bad for your personal integrity, especially if it were to be found out for any reason that you sent that to multiple programs. Be honest, send it only to one program and make sure it's your number one. And if you're not sure who your number one is, then it's okay. You don't have to send that. You can use verbiage like that you're going to rank this program very highly, or even just rank highly on your list. And people might wonder, okay, I have 15 programs on my rank order list. You can't tell all 15 programs that you're going to rank them highly. Again, you have to be honest about what your abilities are in terms of ranking. So maybe pick your top 7 programs and send them a letter of intent that you do intend on ranking them highly for the letter of intent. And the last thing to keep in mind is that you should send it approximately about 2 weeks before the rank order list opens to 2 weeks before the deadline. So there's just about a 4-week window where letters of intent could be very helpful. It's also when you might send those final little updates. I got ECFMG certified. I'm ready to go. I plan on ranking you very highly. I'm very excited about the opportunity to potentially work with you, and I hope you'll consider me as well. And so slipping in those things about your candidacy, maybe you got your green card, you got ECFMG certified. Those are things that you can actually incorporate into the letter of intent now that you've actually established the dialogue with the programs, you've had the interview, and you're reinforcing the notion that you're going to rank them very highly.
Yeah, and I want to take at least just a second to talk about interviews, right? So all 3 of these letters, the letter of interest that is seeking the hopeful interview invitation, the thank you letter after the interview, and then the letter of intent, which is post-interview and reminding the program of something in an interview and expressing your interest of ranking them. It all circles around to the one focal point of the interview. So if you guys are working on preparing for your interviews and you're looking for kind of a one-stop shop, at Metro Resident, we do actually have a really great interview prep course. And if you want to learn more about that, you can either comment or you can DM us and we'll send you the link so that you can explore a little bit and see what the service has to offer. But it's really nice to have everything in one place. There's tons of resources online for learning how to do well in an interview, but they're everywhere. They're all over the place. You'll have 25 different links where you're learning a little bit here, a little bit there. So what we offer is a one-stop shop, really comprehensive, residency-focused interview prep service. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that, and you can just reach out and we'll give you more details.
Exactly. Yeah, and in terms of interviews, as they say, perfect practice makes perfect. So you really absolutely do need to practice, especially if you haven't had any interviews yet, or maybe you're not used to taking interviews. Practicing is one of the most important things you can do. And then beyond practice is you need feedback. You need people to let you know how you're doing. And it's really hard to gauge your own answers sometimes because maybe you're focused on the way you look or the way your voice sounds and not the actual content of your answer. So having a mentor or peer or even advisor, giving you that feedback about your interview question answers can be extremely helpful. So yeah, I definitely agree that interview prep is essential and can be extremely helpful for people getting ready for their interviews, or if you've had one and maybe it didn't go the way you wanted, then practicing is very important as well.
Yeah, and everybody keep an eye out too on our Instagram lives, the upcoming schedule, and our YouTube channel, and even in our IGTV. We, over the next week and 2 weeks, are going to be really pushing out a lot of amazing interview prep resources for you guys. So just keep an eye on Match a Resident. We're working really hard to make sure that we tell you everything that you need to know in order to be successful, in bite-sized, comprehensible pieces. So keep watching.
Perfect. Do you want to dive into some questions for the letters of interest, the thank you letters, and the letters of intent?
Yeah, let's do that.
Perfect.
Uh,
While Tiffany's pulling those up, I just want to remind everybody again, if you need help polishing and editing any letters of communication, we do offer that through residencyexperts.com, and we just knocked the prices down $50 so that they're very affordable right now. Definitely check that out if you'd like help with editing your letters of communication.
okay, so one of the first questions is actually asking, what is your opinion about the couples match for IMG? Should we do couples match, or should we do couples now or in February?
Well, if it's something that you're trying to do, the more time you have to prepare and to let residency programs know and to coordinate with residency programs, I would say the more likely you are to be successful. So, we just had a scenario where somebody that was going through the couples match, one of them got an interview at a residency program, and they wanted to know whether or not they should reach out to that program and say, hey, I'm going through the couples match. My spouse applied to the internal medicine residency program at your institution. If you're able to look at their application and potentially consider inviting them for an interview, that would be great. And you need that opportunity to communicate with programs because they're not necessarily just going to do that for you. So yeah, I would say the more time you have, the better, and the more you're able to communicate your specific needs and interests to programs, the more likely you are to be successful as well.
Yeah, and that actually brings up an interesting point about communicating with programs that's not really part of the 3 letters that we talked about. But if a program has invited you for an interview and opened up that line of communication, it is okay to reach out, as Zeph said, to let them know something like, I'm part of a couples match and my partner, whatever the details may be. That would be different than the letter of interest, right?
Yeah, it falls under a different category. That's more of a general letter of communication. We are conveying a very specific idea or point or request for that program. And talking about the couples match is a great example for that type of letter of communication.
Perfect. Okay, so let's see what our next question here is. I somehow got back to the top of the list. Sorry about that. Let's see. Lots of people joined. That's what I'm scrolling through
Well, that's
right now.
good. I saw one of the comments says, please post, save the live. That's been very helpful. We're glad to hear that it's helpful, and we're going to absolutely save the live like we do for all of them. You'll be able to check it out through Instagram, through the IG live, and we typically post them to YouTube as well. And like Tiffany mentioned, we are basically in interview prep mode where we're going to be posting a lot of interview prep content, especially to YouTube, and doing different takeovers and other lives for interview prep, posting some example answers from various people who've matched already. Tiffany is going to be sharing some input and insight for how to answer some of the most common questions. And again, the interview prep services have 24 video and written lessons plus specialty specific questions, which is so important. Having a question bank that you can practice off of is just so helpful for being able to prepare yourself dynamically for the actual interviews.
Yep, and I'm actually still scrolling through the joined, although I will admit that about every third scroll, my phone
Well, I
takes me.
see a question that says, will PDs be blinded to step one score next match onwards? And this is not totally related to the topic, but I can chat about it real quick. And step one goes pass fail January 26, 2022. Anything taken after that date will just appear as pass fail on your USMLE transcript. But as of right now, programs are expected to be able to see the 3-digit score for step one for people who took it before January 26, 2022. So the idea is that there's going to be a hybrid of pass fail and 3-digit scores as of now. That could change, but that is what the expectation is for the upcoming match cycles.
Sure. All right, I do have one, and this one says, so we'd write to Dr. X, the program coordinator, and Ms. Y, the program, or it's Mr. Dr. X, the program director, and Ms. Y, the program coordinator. And so you were talking about that earlier as far as who to address the letter of interest to. And that is exactly the advice that you gave, was to address it to both the program director and the program coordinator, whatever their formal titles are, doctor, or if in the case of the program coordinator, if they're not a physician, you would use Ms. or Mr., which would be appropriate, right?
Right. And that is definitely a formal way to address both of them. The Ms. and Mr. is optional to some degree because sometimes you might not know if they're a Ms. or Mr. And some people don't necessarily prefer to be addressed that way. But, in terms of formality and protocol, it's probably a safe bet to address them that way. So, but yes, I think using their names is the most important aspect. That way they know you've taken the time to assure who it is you're talking to and who you're addressing.
Sure. Okay, so the next question is, let's see, how do we get the emails of the specific people who we interviewed with? Do we ask the program post-interview?
Yeah, so that's a pretty good question, actually. If you can't find the emails on the website, reaching out to the program coordinator could be helpful, or reaching out during or after the interview to get some of that contact information would definitely be the best way to get that information. The program coordinator is basically your main point of contact for the residency program. You don't want to be bothering the program director unless it's very important. It's a formal letter of interest. But anything other than that, you should really be going through the coordinator to get that information.
Perfect, thank you. All right, we have another one. This one says, will this be shared as a story, actually? So you've already addressed that one, that we definitely share our lives as stories on the IGTV channel and in YouTube. So let's take a look for some more questions. Next question is, you mean add the photos as an attachment?
The photo should be visible in the email itself. So you're actually dragging the photograph into the email, resizing it, and so that it's apparent in the actual body of the email. You don't have to have them open up a link to see your photograph. It should be basically where your signature is, ideally. If you can't figure that out or you can't do that, attaching it as an image would be okay. But it's better that it's visible when they open the email itself, so they don't have to take any extra steps to see it. And your signature should really be very organized and formal and consistent for basically every email that you send.
Yeah, and if you're struggling with how to make that happen, you can just Google how to add my photo into my signature in Gmail or whatever email platform it is that you're using. You should be able to figure out easy instructions for how to do it. I would think that would not be too difficult.
Right.
Uh, let's see. Okay, so the next question says, oh, please save this session. Okay, yep, we're doing that. The next one is letters of interest can be sent during the interview season. And that's a question. So can letters of interest be, oh, yeah, be sent during the interview season? And yeah, absolutely, right?
Exactly.
That's
Right about
that's
now is the time when we would be suggesting to start sending them. It's been 3 weeks since the AIRS application opened. It's enough time that, programs have started to review a large number of applications, and it's not too preemptory where it's like, wow, slow down, it's been 1 week. We need some time to review these. So right about now, it's October 19th. Again, it's been about 3 weeks since AIRS released applications. It's a great time to start sending letters of interest.
awesome.
And it's again something you can send throughout the interview season. Send 5 or 10 over the next couple weeks now. Send 5 or 10 more in November. Send 5 or 10 more in December. Interview invitations go out throughout the application cycle. Interview invitations were getting received in December, January, and even February of last year. So don't underestimate the power of a strong letter of interest, and do take the time to make sure that they're formal and tailored.
Yeah, and one thing too, if you're applying a little bit late in the season, let's say you're just now have sent out some of your applications, then you can go ahead and wait for that, 2 to 3 week window to pass, and then go ahead and send out your letter of interest. And the same goes if you apply on November 1st. You just want to give the program a little bit of time to receive the application, and then you can go ahead and follow up with that letter. So there were a couple more comments just about saving the live, and absolutely we're going to do that. Someone had a really positive comment that it just takes one interview to match, and yeah, absolutely. We definitely have heard from a lot of people asking, should I be worried right now? I don't have any interviews. And as Seth was just saying, these interview invites, they do go out throughout the season. Many programs do have later deadlines, and they are still reviewing or haven't even yet begun reviewing. They're going to wait until their deadline actually comes. So don't be discouraged if you do not have an interview invite yet. That's not something to spend time stressing about. Another question we had is where should I send the DM for the interview prep? You can send that either through Instagram DM or a Facebook DM, or if you had some very specific questions or something like that, you can always email us at support@metroresident.com. So any one of those channels is open and available to you to message us on. And let's see. Next question is, does the time of the interview, early season versus late, affect your chances of matching or being ranked by programs?
To some degree, and what I would say about that is the later you take interviews, the fresher in the program's minds you will be. Um, So, scheduling, if you have the opportunity to schedule your interviews, especially for your top programs, a little bit like mid to late mid season, um, it's actually better because you don't want to schedule it at the very end because, especially if you have many interviews, you actually could be burned out. And you're just, you're not you just have lost your momentum, maybe your enthusiasm for the interviews. It's become like a chore now. Oh man, I have to do another interview. And obviously that's not going to be the case for everybody, but for those people who do have, a large number of interviews, pushing your most important interviews towards the middle, once you've had the practice from the beginning and you're not burned out yet from the end, that's a good period to be taking those interviews. Now, in terms of, whether or not you're going to be ranked higher because you took an interview in mid-December versus mid-November, who's to say? That's why, sending these follow-up letters, these thank yous with your photograph, so that they recognize you, sending the letters of intent with your photograph so that they recognize you again, and just pointing out memorable aspects of your candidacy, reinforcing who you are, especially, pick your top 5 or 10 programs that you're really going to make sure they know you as a person. That can be helpful. So I hope that answers that question.
All right, so the next one, thanking us for doing the live, and we're happy to do it. And their question is asking about letters of interest and when should we start sending them. So I think we've addressed that pretty thoroughly so far. In a nutshell, now is a good time to go ahead and start sending. If you're applying late, 2 to 3 weeks after you're sending the application to the specific program. So I think we've got just a couple more. Okay, so this says, can I change my Eris photo now?
Mhm. As far as I'm aware, you can change it, but you actually have to resend it to all the programs. So whether or not they're going to see the updated photo is questionable, but let's say you had a very bad photograph that you submitted because you didn't realize it should be a professional headshot, then yeah, update your photograph and resend it to programs.
Perfect. And next question, that might have been second to last. Oh no, that was the last. Can I change my photo now? So that was the last question. I thought of something else that I wanted to add in for everybody too regarding interviews, and my light just went out. So if you have a Match a Resident customized program list, one of the really awesome features is that there's interview feedback for the programs on your list. So you can access the list and scroll down a little bit within the individual program profile, and you can see the recordings of experiences that other people have had while interviewing at those programs. And this includes feedback from last cycle, so virtual interview feedback and what that experience was like. It's all available within the system. This is just another little way that you can be extra prepared for your upcoming interviews, getting a little more insight that you really can't find anywhere else easily. So if you have a customized list, get in there and make sure that you're reviewing that interview feedback. And if you don't have a list, you can still get one and you'll have access to all of this information, plus the rank assist tool, the interview manager. So there are lots of different tools within Match a Resident that are really helpful for this point in the match cycle, regardless of if you were able to use it for your program research or not.
Right. So once you get an interview, make sure you put it into the interview manager tool. And then before your interview, make sure you're researching the program and reading the interview feedback. And then soon after your interview has been completed, make sure you fill out the rank assist survey. Don't wait until February to fill out all your rank assist surveys because you're going to have your interviews mixed up in your mind. You're not going to remember the specifics. So do rank assist as soon as you have completed your interviews, or at least, within about a week. So yeah, interview manager, interview feedback, rank assist, interview prep, all those things are going to be extremely helpful. And again, one last shout out for residencyexperts.com. If you need help with editing your letters of communication, send us your letter for polishing through Residency Experts. We'll be glad to help. If you have more questions or comments, you can definitely DM us. Make sure you're subscribed to YouTube and you're taking in all the interview prep content that we're releasing. And yeah, just let us know if there's any topics that you guys want covered. And we hope that this live has been helpful. It seems like it was. And anything you'd like to add, Tiffany?
No, just, best wishes for success for everybody this season. We are rooting for you guys and we want to help however we can. So always feel free to message us. We're literally just waiting for your messages to come in and trying to give as much advice as we can. So never hesitate to reach out. We want to be the most helpful resource for all of the IMGs that we possibly can be.
Perfect. Well, best of luck. As Tiffany said, enjoy yourselves. And, you know, for the interviews, make sure you be yourself as well. And we will catch you on the next live. So goodbye for now.
Bye, everybody.